I have a book coming out in October about the prison students that I teach, that I care a lot about. It's called Our Class: Trauma and Transformation in an American Prison. And yeah, my heart's on every page of that. That comes out in October.
Now, that is a fascinating aspect of your life, that you teach inside a prison, Rutgers course, right? And you constantly say how smart these kids are, that they could outthink anybody at Princeton or Rutgers. And how could that possibly be?
Well, because they actually understand the configurations of power. They know how social control works. They don't have any illusions about the justice system or political oppression or neoliberalism, so the whole basis of their understanding of the world is at an exponentially higher level than any of these kids at Princeton who go to Princeton because they all want to be part of the 1%. That's why they're there. Talk about branding. And they turn their cells into libraries. I mean, they are, really impressive intellectuals. A few years ago, the Bard prison team debated Harvard and clobbered them. And everyone said, "Oh, how could that happen? That's amazing." All of us who teach in the prison weren't surprised. So they come out, they're what Gramsci calls organic intellectuals. And intellectuals are in every class, but they never had a chance.
And so, go ahead.
So they are incredibly impressive. I mean, my students, they can finish their BA degree in the prison, or if they get a 3.1, they can matriculate. My students graduate summa cum laude from Rutgers. I mean, I had one, I didn't teach him, but he was in the program. He graduates summa cum laude, a great guy from Rutgers, and then he gets the first Harry S. Truman Fellowship any Rutgers student has gotten in over a decade, and he goes to the University of Cambridge in England, and he gets a master's degree in philosophy. And he's huge, 6'8", black guy, 310 pounds, and I was with another guy. These guys all in the 400 club, which means they bench over 400. We were walking down a street in Princeton. He's another great intellectual, a great writer. And we're walking down the street, and I said, I'm sure people wonder, what's that like dweeby white guy doing with those two black? I said, what they don't know is what I know, is that you're nerds just like me, and you go home and read every night just like I do. No, they're real. And that's where my hope lies. So, I mean, I've got students who get out, they go to Rutgers, and they're organizing, maybe because of COVID, it's on ice, but they were organizing the service workers at Rutgers. And they're black. And a lot of those workers are, at least some of them, I can assure you, voted for Trump. And that's where my hope lies, in real radicals and real intellectuals who are invisible are made invisible by the mainstream. So
those are the kind of people that I wonder why aren't around more often, like people like Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, real revolutionaries. And it's got to be because, I mean, I think in 1980 there were like 300,000 people in prison, and now there's a couple million. And I think that's the big difference. We're the world's largest penal colony, so the next Fred Hampton is probably in prison right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. No question about it. And, August Wilson wrote about it. He said all of the real warriors are in prison because they went and tried to get for their families what their families needed when the world around them denied them. And that's right. That's where they are. And that's the people I hang out with because, number one, there's an intellectual bond there, but also there's a toughness and an understanding. I mean, you don't push these people around. They don't. First of all, they can't vote because they're ex-felons. So they don't have any illusions about the system at all. That's where hope lies, in those people, none of whom you're ever going to see on Rachel Maddow, Lawrence O'Donnell, or anywhere else.
Can you tell the story, if you have time, about the action that your students took when they were required to not make eye contact with their eyes with the guards?
Right. So prisons, I think, what most people don't understand is that prison are plantations. I think mass incarceration is a civil rights issue of our time. They are run like plantations with white overseers, largely. There are black corrections officers, but it's even the black corrections officers oftentimes are subject to racist. I mean, for instance, in the mess hall in one of the prisons I taught at, the white officers the black officers would sit at a table and they came for breakfast and they'd taken three Special K boxes and put them all together so they read KKK. So there is that racial dynamic is very strong within the prison system. My students, they pay a heavy price for resistance, like Julian, like Edward Snowden, because they're captives, but they resist anyway. And so there was a rule in one of the prisons that they had to keep their heads down, like on a plantation in the South. You couldn't look at a white person in the eye. And so they refused, and they walked through the halls with their heads up. And of course, what they do is they go and find the leaders and throw them in solitary confinement, or ship them to another prison and throw them in solitary confinement, often for months. I mean, the leaders of the Free Alabama movement, which did prison strikes, they will call me on clandestine cell phones. They're in indefinite solitary confinement. So I taught a class. They took away their water heaters, the food. Much of the food's unedible. It's unhealthy. So they like to heat up their ramen noodles. That's what most prisoners live on, along with their instant coffee. And they took those little water heaters away. And so they did a sit-down strike. And of course, what they did is strip search the cells and went to find the leaders and ship them out of the prison and put them in solitary confinement. That is a constant within the prison system. So I admire these people for having the courage to stand up against such monolithic authority, and they stand up anyway, and fully aware of the consequences, just to assert their own dignity as a human being. And these are the people I respect. These are the people I spend my time with, invest my time with. I've been teaching in the prisons for 10 years. These are the people I admire. I gave a commencement address a couple years ago. It's on YouTube. I encourage people to look at it. It's only 10 minutes where I talk about my students. I think if you go to YouTube, type in Chris Hedges, Rutgers commencement, it should come up. I don't know what the heading is, but these are real people, and people of great integrity, worth, dignity, intelligence, and courage. It's a privilege. It's a privilege for me to be able to be their teacher.
Chris Hedges, thanks for being our guest. You can read his work at sheerpost.com, his most recent book, America, the Farewell Tour, and he has another book coming out in October, and hopefully you'll come back on and talk to us about that.
Anytime, Jimmy. Thanks for doing it, and thanks for doing what you do.
Right back at you. The Jimmy Dore Show is coming to a city near you August 28th. We're in Las Vegas at the Plaza, and we just added another show in Portland. We're there in Portland on September 10th and 11th. October 3rd, we're at Harlow's in Sacramento. More dates being added. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets. See you at a live show.